Atheist Philosophies Class 1. Thank you for attending this evening. This class will encompass the first lecture on atheist philosophies. When I mention to see a subject, I mean to refer to AtheistScholar.org for a more thorough discussion of the topic. Philosophy is a study of matters of foundational knowledge about life, morals, knowledge, language, reason, and human values. It relies on what is known as a systematic approach and generally relies on rational arguments. Atheism is not considered a philosophy, nor is it a belief system. However, many atheists embrace philosophies that have resonance with their secular worldview. There are many schools of philosophy with different branches of inquiry. These two lectures on atheist philosophies will focus on 6 major schools of thought and the important thinkers who defined and discoursed on philosophy and important books in each philosophic area. The lectures will glance at naturalism, humanism, existentialism, skepticism, objectivism, and logical positivism. It will also briefly discuss Ludwig Feuerbach and Arthur Schopenhauer, because although neither thinker is attached to the philosophic schools covered in atheist philosophies, they are very important in the history of atheist thought. Philosophy is not necessarily a way of life, but a person's actions are sometimes determined by the philosophic direction that has informed them. At issue for atheists in the philosophic arena is the worldview of the secular thinker vis-a-vis the view of the theist. The non-religious thinker sees the cosmos and all objects in it, including humans, as wholly material. Metaphysical concepts such as the soul and immortality form no portion of atheist thinking. The secular worldview contains no room for supernatural concepts concerning a God who has caused the creation of the universe, the evolution of species, or who controls the physical world in any manner. Naturalism. Many atheists identify themselves as naturalists, as metaphysical naturalism is the worldview that states there are nothing but natural forces and causes in the universe. There are many forms of naturalism, but for the purposes of atheist philosophy, our emphasis will be on metaphysical naturalism and a few segues into scientific naturalism or methodological naturalism, as well as ontological naturalism. Naturalism rejects any explanation or transcendental belief in objects that are considered supernatural by theists. It is a belief that nature and only nature can exist, and that explanations for observable events in nature can be explained by resort to examining observable causes. Most naturalists reject the concept that humans are sinful and depend on God. They reject the idea that people can only make sense of their lives if they live them according to some supernatural command. On the contrary, naturalists believe that people can control their lives without believing in God or any transcendental entity. The roots of naturalism lie in ancient Greece. The 7th century BCE philosopher Thales believed that all existence was one substance. There was Protagoras, the 5th century BCE philosopher, who maintained that observation and inquiry, rather than omens, auguries, and priestly pronouncements, were more effective tools for understanding the world. Democritus, the 5th century BCE Greek philosopher, stated that all nature was composed of atoms. Accompanying such proto-scientific beliefs about the world were the ameliorating philosophies for human flourishing in the Hellenistic cosmopolitan Greek civilization. For the atheist scholar, the most important of these schools was Epicureanism. Epicurus was a 1st century BCE philosopher and the author of On Nature, the definitive treatise of his school. He believed in an atomistic world that moves in a void and is governed by natural laws. Epicurus saw the gods as types of human beings, but immortal, who lived in spaces between multiple universes in perfect contentment. Such gods had no interest in human beings. Epicureans tried to live their lives with pleasure and moderation as objectives. They believed in the annihilation of the self at death. Happiness for the Epicurean was enjoyment of the pleasures of peace, repose, study, friendships, and play. Epicurus wanted men to lose their fear of death and of the gods. His most famous and quoted statement on the nature of God is still an excellent argument for atheism in the present day. Either God wants to abolish evil and cannot, or he can but does not want to. If he wants to but cannot, he is impotent. If he can but does not want to, he is wicked. Lucretius, the 1st century BCE Roman poet, was an Epicurean, and his writing is as simple and elegant as the Epicurean philosophy. He authored the great naturalist poem, The Nature of Things, around 50 BCE. In this remarkable work, Lucretius writes about a materialistic universe, its beginnings and workings. He speaks about the naturalistic manner in which human societies evolved. Lucretius takes up human discoveries and attributes, such as languages, and discusses how they originated from natural causes. Nature of Things is the quintessential Epicurean philosophy in verse. The poem reiterates the themes of causal explanation of the universe and the freeing of men's minds from fear as a result. It affirms free will and denies a survival of the soul after death. Epicurean philosophy was the first time in Western philosophy that a naturalistic worldview was so fully articulated. As Christianity rose to dominance in the West, with the later spread of Islam, metaphysical naturalism waned. Originally, many scholars stated that there was little evidence of naturalism in the Renaissance. However, the works of Aristotle, the 5th century BCE Greek philosopher, were reintroduced to the West during the Renaissance. A current volume by Stephen Greenblatt, called The Swerve, discusses how the Renaissance scholar Poggio rediscovered Lucretius's Nature of Things. Greenblatt's position is that Lucretius's poem was highly influential in moving thought into its modern mode. It has won the National Book Award, has been named one of the New York Times Notable Books of the Year, and remarkably was on the bestseller list. The work of early scientists such as Copernicus, Keller, Galileo, and Leonardo da Vinci demonstrates an empirical method that would produce a predictive reality model. There were natural philosophers such as Francis Bacon, a proponent of the scientific method in the 16th century, and Robert Boyle, famous for inventing the air pump in the 17th century, who was called the father of chemistry. Many of these men found themselves in conflict with the powerful Catholic Church, both in their conclusions about the world and the methods used to attain them. In 1687, Isaac Newton published his Principia. This was the first time simple mathematical laws of gravity, inertia, and mass described the movement of Earth and the heavens, bringing them together. Formerly, they were thought to be separate. In the mid-17th century, Baruch de Spinoza maintained that God was identical with the impersonal forces of nature. His monism, merged with Newtonian theory, helped eliminate the supernatural from the thinking world at that time. William Harvey showed the heart worked like a machine, pumping blood through the body. These discoveries opened the way for the concept of natural causation. The Enlightenment in the 18th century produced philosophic theorists who popularized Newton, Boyle, and Harvey. It has been pointed out that the French philosophers were the first public intellectuals. The publication of the Encyclopedia, edited by Denis Diderot and others, and first published in 1751, furthered naturalism as it was meant to collect all the knowledge of nature at that time. John Locke in 17th century England and Jean-Jacques Rousseau in 18th century France undermined the deterministic chain of being hierarchical concept that posited fixed roles for people. Chain of being was based partly on the fall of man, on account of sin from the paradise myth. God was at the top of that chain, according to the medieval view, with authority passing to the divinely ordained monarch. Locke in Britain and Rousseau in France initiated theories of humans and secular social contracts. Both philosophers attacked the churches and the monarchies for their corrupt and reactionary social systems. Baron de Holbach wrote an important volume in 1770, The System of Nature, which denied any truths not observed as part of natural law, which included the concept of God. Charles Darwin published Origin of Species in 1859, which explained natural selection. This volume, in one stroke, unified the life sciences with the rest of the natural sciences and ended the need to posit supernatural causes as an explanation for the order and diversity of nature. The rise of naturalism, particularly its emphasis on the scientific method, culminated around 1870 in the most important and independent American philosophy, that of pragmatism, also known as the Columbia School. Its founder was Charles S. Peirce. Pragmatism rejected the vague metaphysical speculation of the 19th century transcendentalists. Pragmatism was empirical in methodology. Charles Peirce and William James were both radical empiricists. They believed that a proposition is true only if it works successfully. Consequences of an idea or concept were the important criteria for accepting a theory. The pragmatic philosophy was most interested in the individual placed within society and in the adaptive responses of people within social groups. Pragmatists believed that meaning and mind arise in the context of social action.